I'm not actually church shopping, but I do like to look at the menu. Hello, everyone. I found this book some 6 months ago or so at a thrift shop, and I'm just getting around to looking at it. It is the Handbook of Denominations in the United States, 10th edition, and this edition was printed sometime after 1995 or around 1995. And it's an interesting book, but really you can learn more about denominations by watching the terrific YouTube channel of Ready for Harvest. I'll put a link in the description for those of you who may not be familiar, although I'm guessing most of you are already aware of that channel. But he gives a rundown of various Christian denominations, their description, history, what differentiates them from other denominations, etc. He does a tremendous job, and I give him a thumbs up. But and his is much more, up to date. This from the 90s. There are new denominations being birthed all the time, and the reason I'm talking about this today, I have been a member of the Church of the Nazarene pretty much my entire life, and I don't have any plans to change that. But lately, my family and I have discussed trying out some other churches in our area for various reasons. And while we're not necessarily changing churches at this point, we're kind of taking a period where our local church is going through a transition of sorts, and we are taking that opportunity to just explore some of the other churches in our area that we might find interesting. And as part of that, spiritual religious tourism, I guess you might call it, we ended up last Sunday at a church of a denomination that I was unfamiliar with, but had elements with which I am very familiar. And we were pleased, and I haven't checked with Thrift Store Bibles, aka Miserable Offender, to see if it was okay to say this, so I hope I'm not stepping outside the bounds here, but it was nice to meet up with Miserable Offender, Scott, at Miserable Offender, for a church service that wasn't too far a drive for either of us, so that was nice. It's not exactly local, but wasn't too far a drive. And also my parents. So it was nice to worship in a church with my folks, my own family, and Scott. So without giving away too much detail, it is an Anglican, a continuing Anglican denomination, of which there are apparently several, one of the major, I guess, being the Anglican Church in North America. And I wasn't sure, the denomination, of the church that I visited is the Episcopal Missionary Church. I was completely unfamiliar, and I wasn't sure they would be in this book, because it sounds like it's a relatively recent splinter from the Episcopal Church in America. But there is a mention here briefly in the other Anglican bodies in the United States. It goes some of the history of the splintering of the Episcopal Church. Quite a number of Anglican separatist groups came into being after 1977 in response to two actions of the Episcopal Church: the admission of women to the church's priesthood in 1976 and the adoption of a new revised prayer book in 1977. And it mentions the formation of the Anglican Church of North America, of which I think it's unrelated to or not the same as the Anglican Church in North America that we have today. That was formed incorporated much later, much more recently. But in the last paragraph here, in 1922, members of the Episcopal Synod of America, a conservative organization within the Episcopal Church founded in 1989, formed the Episcopal Missionary Church and became the latest, at that time, the latest separatist body. It too reflects Catholic ritual and theology, along with some evangelical and low church elements. So the church I visited uses the 1928 Book of Common Prayer, and that's what originally drew me to that. I am familiar with the use of the 1928 American Prayer Book for morning and evening prayer. And one Sunday a month, they do, in place of the Holy Communion service, they do morning prayer. And I thought it would be more appropriate for me to visit on a Sunday when they were doing morning prayer because, one, I'm more familiar with that, and two, I wasn't certain yet of their regulations regarding receiving the elements for someone who is not a member of the church, or I didn't know what their requirements would be. So for the first visit, I wanted to be there for a morning prayer service, and it was very beautiful. It's a new building, less than a year old. The service, again, from the 1928 prayer book, they used the 1940 Episcopal hymnals. So all of the hymns associated with morning prayer, which is a new addition to morning prayer. Obviously, on my own, I don't use hymnody on my own. I'm not a gifted enough musician for that to make sense. But it was a very nice service. There were helpful hints in the bulletin. There were some description of the liturgical worship of that church. That was helpful, kind of the history. There were some basic instructions on the back telling you a rough guide to when to stand, when to sit, and when to kneel, which is helpful for a visitor, and I appreciated that. But some of the music was really just very beautiful, very reverent and elevated. And I'll insert a little section here of that. And as you can see, they do have the prayer books and the hymnals in the pew backs, and it looks like the same edition of the prayer book that I have here as I'm knocking things over. That was my 10 of book darts falling. I believe these were the ones that they had in the pew backs, but of course I saw it as an opportunity to bring my own much loved, frequently used edition of the prayer book with me, and Scott of course had his as well. So it was a wonderful experience. It's not a church that's close enough to me where it would be feasible to attend regularly, although the rector and deacon argued otherwise. And they were extremely friendly, and it was overall a very nice experience. But I don't see at this point me making a switch in that area, but I just felt kind of led at this point to take a moment to take stock of what being a member of a church means to me, and what I can bring to a church that I'm a member of, as well as what I should expect from a church that I am supporting. So anyway, this was kind of a rambling video. I appreciate you sticking with it. Maybe I'll keep you updated on these things and check in periodically. I talk a lot on my Sunday videos about the prayer book or Bibles that I have found at thrift shops or things of that character. Through the week, I may be doing videos on radios or pencils mostly, or manual typewriters. Who knows? Check in. I appreciate it. Watch those things that are of interest to you and like the ones you watch. Thanks for stopping by. Hope to see you here again next time.